Hey everyone, Guy from Midwinter Minis here. In this video we're going to be painting up the final explorer from the Blackstone Fortress Escalation expansion, the Rogue Trader Neyam Shai Murad. I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to paint this model up. The design is so ostentatious and flashy, the temptation is to go with really bold colours. However, I'm going to resist the urge to make her look like a grimdark macaw and go for a weathered, realistic look. Maybe something approaching Blanchitsu, but with some speed painting shortcuts. First off, I primed the model with a grey primer, so it'll act as a nice base for all of the colours I'll be using. And then I mixed brown paint with a tiny touch of black just to darken it down and desaturate it. I used this colour to paint the outside of her cool trench coat, her trousers, and the armour elements that I wanted to paint gold later. I then made a new lighter brown, blending a tiny touch of khaki paint into the normal brown, and gave all of the parts I just painted a heavy dry brush. As you can see, this immediately leaves a nice scratchy, worn leather look, and it's good to get this out of the way as it's obviously quite a messy technique. Now we're going to block in our black areas. Nice and simple, just her boot, gloves, and the base of the model. Mix up a small amount of our usual bone colour by blending khaki and white paint, and use a smaller brush to paint the little exposed parts of her face, neck and ears. And while we've got this colour out, give the skulls a quick coat too. When I was doing this ear, I accidentally clipped the collar of her coat. No worries, your brown paint will still be wet on your palette, so just tidy it up when you can. You see, I still leave the clock running even when I make mistakes. These little back and forth tidying up steps are just part of every paint job, so don't feel bad if you make mistakes. Right, now add a little bit of red into that bone colour we just made for the skin and skulls to make a desaturated, slightly dull pinky red, and use this to paint the fabric hanging down from her helmet as well as the lining of her coat. The angle that you go in at the coat from is quite important so you don't hit the legs by mistake. Take your time a little bit more on this step because it'll be hard to recreate that brushed leather effect if you paint over it by accident. Now with slightly thinned white paint, give the feather in her cap a quick go over. We'll give it another one once it's dried. In the meantime, use your silver paint to start blocking in the areas you'd like to be shiny metallic silver. I'm going for the stiletto leg, the tubing, buckles, pauldron and knee pad. If you've added any debris to your base, now's the time to give it a quick dry brush and then give her boot and gloves a slightly more careful dry brush too. Now that last messy bit is out of the way, let's paint the gold parts. So I'm hitting all the fancy armour plates that have that nice gilded design on them, as well as her pistols. Give that a couple of minutes to dry, and why not check out my Instagram account while you're at it, at MWMinis. Moving on to the wash stage, we're going to use this to tie all of the colours together and add some cheaty definition. I mixed water, brown wash and black wash in equal parts and painted the entire model. When you're done, take a minute just to catch the areas where the wash pools heavily. Use a dry brush to wick away the excess so you won't get any ugly tide marks when the model dries. And while you're waiting for that step to dry, hit the flat areas of the base and the rim with another coat of black to seal the deal. So just 36 minutes in, and you've got yourself a pretty respectable tabletop ready Rogue Trader. This is the kind of paint job you can easily squeeze in during a lunch break, some quiet time in the morning, or some screen-free wind-down time before bed. As always in these speed painting tutorials, I'm going to spend another few minutes showing you how you can take it to the next level in terms of paint job, but first I'd like to sincerely thank the new supporters who recently joined our Patreon. James, Jason, Dennis, Jonathan, Wolfgar, HM, Marquis, Nick, Imogen, Andrew, and Chogosaurus. Apart from helping us out with hobby supplies, our patrons also get access to the Midwinter Minis Discord, where they can chat with us, get advice, and share their work in progress pics. Just $2 a month. Seems pretty reasonable, huh? Anyway, on with the speed paint. So, first slightly more advanced step, let's make that leather coat look a bit more warp ravaged. Mix up that lighter brown again using khaki and brown in roughly equal parts, and prepare a stiff bristle brush just the way you would if you were about to dry brush. But this time we're going to do some firm stippling over the raised areas of the coat. The uneven bristles of the slightly battered brush make really nice scratches on the leather, Now don't go overboard, just a little bit here and there. And using the same colour, switch out to a smaller brush and scratch out some fine lines here and there to hint at maybe deeper scrapes in the leather. Now whip up some of your bone colour again, and we'll use this to bring some of the more prominent parts of the skin and skulls back up with some soft highlighting. Make sure to thin the paint nicely so it's a bit more transparent than usual, and it'll blend in quite nicely. Use a smaller brush and just gently graze the prominent parts, totally avoiding the recesses. You can also use this colour to create a few more bright grazes, patches and scratches on the leather trench coat too. Now I know what you're thinking, Guy, that's too much, you ruined it. Don't worry, this is really thin and very transparent, so you'll see how almost invisible it is in a minute once it dries. Now we've got that bone colour on the go again, we can add some red into it and use that desaturated pinky red to highlight some of the fabric. Thin it down with water and again, avoid the recesses. If you want to, you can also add some gentle highlights to the lining of her coat. There are two areas where the light would hit, so just focus on those and don't bother trying to reach any hard areas behind her legs. Avoid painting into the swirly pattern, just on the flat areas around it. Remember, this paint is thin, so it'll dull down as it dries. Next up, I made a slightly warmer brown glaze by swirling a tiny bit of yellow paint into a few drops of brown wash, and used that as a sort of filter to tint the feather in her cap, but also to add a bit of colour back into the leather trench coat as it was looking a little bit too washed out for what I had in mind. To add some more texture, once the filter wash was on the coat, I took a dry, stiff brush and scratched away some of the colour from the surface. Next up, I used straight silver paint to catch the metal parts, just a little bit here and there. You're not reapplying a base coat, just adding a bit more shine to the prominent areas that were dulled down in the wash stage. I mixed a bit of gold into that silver paint on my palette, and used that aged metal colour to highlight the gold armour and pistols. And finally, I grabbed my black wash and added a few streaks here and there to the bottom of the trench coat. And I also used this paint on the underside of some of the hidden areas on the model, like the armpits, the crotch and the inside of her left leg, making them appear just a little bit more shadowy. And after the shine from that black wash has died down, you've just painted a pretty awesome looking Rogue Trader in less than 1 hour. Give yourself a pat on the back, smash that like button, subscribe to Midwinter Minis, and let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments. I don't just read them all, I reply to them all as well. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.